Hey everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video, and today we're going to be doing my Zelda Timeline theory. Now there's a few things I'm going to go into before I even get into the theory itself. First of all is a disclaimer. Oh, and it's a big one. To the general public, no one knows what the official Zelda Timeline is. We only have our theories. The only people that know what the official Zelda Timeline is Miyamoto and his Zelda team. To us, the gamers, we only have our theories. You know, a game could come by and totally destroy my theory. Totally disprove every other theory. This is more or less to help you guys out. Maybe point you in a general direction to, like, make your own Zelda Timeline theory. But this is just a theory. It's not official. With that said, there are things in the Zelda universe that we hold to be true. Facts. Stuff that helps us create these theories. And I'm going to go over some of this. And I'm also going to tell you the reasons why I made my timeline theory, the stuff that I use. First of all is that there are multiple links in multiple Zeldas throughout the Zelda universe. We know this to be true. There's different links for each game. And there are only a few exceptions where it's the same link in different games. For example, Ocarina of Time Link and Majora's Mask Link are the same links, but they're completely different links from Adventure of Link or Majora's Mask Link. They're totally different. So, we know there are multiple links in Zelda. There's also something called the split timeline theory. Now, this is where at the end of Ocarina of Time, there are two endings. The one in the future, when Link is gone. He's gone back in time, and Ganon has been defeated. And then the one in the past, when Link goes back in time to his right timeline, and he helps prevent Ganon's attack on the castle. This is called the split timeline. That means that a certain amount of games is in one timeline, a certain amount of games are in different timelines. These are usually called Timeline A, Timeline B, or Child Timeline, Adult Timeline. Yeah. It's a little confusing, but it does help rectify some of the disputes on which game goes where. Now, with that said, there's also a dispute on which game goes first. Ocarina of Time or Minish Cap. For my timeline, I'm going to put Ocarina of Time first. There's a few reasons why. First of all is, in Ocarina of Time, the Great War happens right before the game starts. Link is born during the Great War. Where in Minish Cap, the Great War has been done with for many, many years. Hundreds of years. So, that's one reason why I put Ocarina of Time first. The second reason is Miyamoto said it was the first game. Now, this is way back in the early 2000s, but still, he said it was the first game. The other thing is Minish Cap could possibly be in its own separate timeline, which I'll deal with a bit more later. Now, to help you guys out, I'm going to abbreviate all the games. This is Zelda kind of terminology that we use, like OOT, Ocarina of Time, MM, Majora's Mask, LOZ, Legend of Zelda. This is just going to help you guys out, and it's going to make making my timeline a little bit easier. I'm going to post this up in a moment before I actually do the timeline. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm going to be using this poster board and write down the Zelda timelines here. There are going to be two timelines with a possible third. The third timeline is going to be the Minish Cap timeline. And in that timeline, I'm going to show you it's separate, and I'm also going to show you where it would be put in the normal timeline. So, with that said, here are the Zelda abbreviations. Okay, on to the theory itself. Now, for the sake of this video and for the theory, I'm only going to mention the multiple links. I'm not going to bother with Zelda, and I'm not going to bother with Ganon. Reasons being is that there's more Zeldas than there are links, and it's a little bit more confusing. Here's an example. Before Ocarina of Time even happens, there was a Zelda who had a curse placed on her, which caused her to go into a deep sleep. She is actually the Zelda that you have to free in Adventure of Link, many hundred years later. She's also the reason why all the Zeldas are named Zelda. It's because her brother made a rule that the firstborn daughter to the king always needs to be named Zelda. So that kind of answers the question for you, but you kind of can see how it can get confusing. In addition to that Ganon, there's one Ganon for each timeline. It's as simple as that. So I'm only going to mention the links. So first in my timeline is going to be Ocarina of Time. As I stated before, the Great War has just happened. Miyamoto said it was the first game, so I'm going to place that as first in the timeline. And we have the first link. Now, the game ends and we have the split timeline. We have the adult timeline, set in the future, and we have the child timeline, set in the past or present day. Now, next in the child timeline would be Majora's Mask, which is the same Link. The Link travels to a different land, helps out those people, eventually returns to Hyrule, he settles down, and that's the end of it. We then have at least 100 years later, Twilight Princess. Now in this we have a new Link, and the old Link also makes a cameo as the ghost or the spirit that trains you. Now, this is still iffy on whether or not this is the original Link, but if it is used to connect the two games together, or the two Links together. So we have a new Link, and also cameo appearance by the ghost of the old Link. Twilight Princess ends, and now, several hundred years later, we have A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening, which I consider the same Link. There's a lot of debate on where Link's Awakening belongs. I'm going to put it along with A Link to the Past Link because, well, they look the same and it just fits really well. So there's your third Link in this timeline. Now, the connection between these two games, and the reason why I put them so close together, is the location, the Master Sword, and the terrain of Hyrule. It just fits up really well. And then next in the timeline would be the fourth Link, which would be Legend of Zelda's Link and Adventure of Link's Link. Now, this is the same Link. We know that Adventure of Link is the sequel to Legend of Zelda. So that would be the end of the child timeline. Now, as you can see there, we do have Oracle Seasons and Oracle of Ages. I'll deal with that in a moment because the placing of these games could be anywhere. Moving on to the adult timeline, this is after Link leaves, and the Great Flood happens because he's not there to defend Hyrule against evil. We then have Wind Waker's Link, who is also the same Link in Phantom Hourglass. We know this to be true because it's a sequel of Wind Waker. And that's the end of what I consider the adult timeline. We now have a third timeline that I have, is the Minish Cap timeline, which we have Minish Cap and then Four Swords Adventures. And we know Four Swords Adventures is a different Link, but it does make reference to the Minish Cap Link. So these two are connected. Now, if you want to add this to the normal timeline theory here, you can kind of put it right here after Phantom Hourglass. But that's only if you wanted to add it here. I keep it separate. It just makes more logical sense, and it causes less problems to the normal timeline if it's separate. And then Zelda Spirit Track. Where it goes, I don't know yet. It hasn't come out. One could theorize it belongs with Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass, but that wouldn't make sense because the place is still flooded. So I feel as though it probably belongs with Minish Cap and Four Swords Adventures. But then again, I have to wait till the game comes out to place it anywhere. Now to Oracle Seasons and Oracle of Ages. These games can be either placed after Twilight Princess or after Link's Awakening with a new Link. Now, the reason why I'm putting it in this timeline is because Twinvora, the witch, you know, the one that you deal with in Ocarina of Time, is still alive. So that means you must have never killed her. That means she would be in this timeline. Because technically you killed her, she would not show up here. So that would make the Oracle Season, Oracle of Ages games be in this timeline, where you can put them almost anywhere. It's really up to you. So, let's just go over a quick overview again, and then we'll wrap up this video. First game we have off is Ocarina of Time. Splitting off, we have the two separate timelines, the child timeline and the adult timeline. We have then Majora's Mask, the same Link in the first game in the child timeline. Coming up is Twilight Princess, which is the second Link in the adult timeline. Moving on, we have A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening, the third Link in the child timeline. And then we move on to Legend of Zelda and Adventure of Link, the fourth Link in the Zelda timeline. You can also put the Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages Link somewhere in this timeline. Moving on, we have the adult timeline, where we have Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass's Link. Then we also have the Minish Cap timeline, which has the Minish Cap Link and the Four Swords Adventure link. Now you can put this in the adult timeline if you want. And lastly, we have Spirit Tracks. Where that goes, we don't know. So, I hope that timeline theory helps you out, maybe give you some clarification. There's a lot more facts and a lot more detail that I can put into this, but I'm not going to bother because it would take up too much time, too much effort, and my batteries are probably running out right now. Yeah, the bane of my life, the batteries in my camera. But I hope this helps you guys out, at least to give you guys a general direction on where you guys can put your own Zelda Timeline theories. And like I said, this is just a theory. Anything could happen to totally change this thing. Go 180 and whoa, craziness. But that's the way Zelda is, and I love it for it, and I wouldn't want it any other way. With that said, this is Andrew, saying peace out for now.